Welcome to the podcast where we redefine midlife, perimenopause and menopause as a time to thrive in all areas of our lives. Health, fitness, mindset and mental health, relationships, finances and purpose, with a big dose of style and empowerment and a few laughs thrown into the mix. I'm so excited to have you join me as we dive into today's discussion. I'm all about taking action and giving you light bulb moments and actionable steps to take to keep you moving forward towards the best version of yourself possible. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to Menopause and Margaritas, the podcast where we cut through the noise of diet culture, help you to reset your metabolism and get you feeling amazing in your body. I'm Beck. And today we're going to be talking about something that trips up so many women, so many people when it comes to weight loss and changing their health. It's called motivation. It's almost a dirty word, isn't it? Motivation. Let's get into it. We all love motivation when it's there. It feels like this magic wave of energy driving us toward our goals. But what happens when it disappears? When the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and you don't feel like working out, when those cravings hit and you suddenly forget your plan. That's where most women get stuck, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So grab your coffee, your herbal tea, or hey, depending on time of day, maybe a margarita, and let's dive in. Let's talk about why motivation is fleeting and why that is a problem. So here's the deal. Motivation is like a spark. It feels amazing in the moment, but it burns out fast, a bit like a match. Ever felt super inspired after watching a documentary, reading a book, or hearing a great podcast like this one? And then 2 days later, you are back in old habits. I mean, have you lived? If you haven't done this, I've had motivation about 1 million different things and still do. I have not managed to master this in every area of my life. So I'm not talking about motivation from some lofty heights. I've certainly been able to put into place some of the things we're going to be talking about. And I certainly find that when it comes to some areas, it's easier than others. But we've all been there, right? Because motivation is tied to emotions, and emotions change by the hour. Sometimes mine don't even last that long. I could have all 10 emotions or more within 5 minutes. So, if you're relying on motivation to eat better, to exercise, to get the results that you want, to follow through on anything that's important, you are setting yourself up for failure. And hello, you're all nodding your heads because I am too. I can, without any effort, think about 10 things in the last 12 months that, I haven't managed to get there because I haven't put the right habits into place. Motivation is unreliable. It's not what keeps people successful in the long term. And what does? The word I'm about to use. It's not a dirty word. It's a word that's going to help you. Habit or habits. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's talk about the neuroscience of habit formation. So what's happening in our brains? Well, our brains love habits. Why? Because habits save energy. Do you remember that story about Barack Obama and someone saw the suits that were hanging up in his wardrobe, and he only had one suit multiplied by 7 different suits, all exactly the same suit. Why? Because it took a decision out of his day, and his brain got to conserve energy for the important decisions that a president might need to make. That's a habit. It's something that you build in that you don't have to think about. And our brains are constantly looking for ways to be more efficient and save energy, especially in menopause, where, lack of energy is a problem for most of us. So anything you do repeatedly, it turns into an automatic behaviour. Have you ever driven home from work and realised that you barely remember the drive? It is slightly terrifying, but it's also because our brain has turned that drive into a habit. It doesn't have to think about every turn, so it runs that pattern on autopilot. Now, the problem is this works both positively and negatively. It works in relation to both our good and our bad habits. If you've been stress eating chips or chocolate every night after dinner, that's a habit, and we've all had that. In fact, I currently am on week 3 of my metabolic balance reset. Guess why? Because some bad habits had crept into my days, and I needed to do a reset to remove those habits out of my life that were not getting me to where I needed to go, and to replace them with habits that were going to do that. So habits, when we're not deliberate, habits can creep in and they remain unchecked. So that's the thing. If you've been, always eating dinner at a certain time, or you've been having a certain snack after dinner, or you've been, the morning snack person, like lots of my ladies are, or they always have to have 2 bits of chocolate after every single meal, well, you automatically reach for those things, don't you? It's a habit. You don't even think about it. Your brain is not judging the habit. It just repeats what's been wired in, on automatic pilot. But guess what? You can rewire those patterns. And that's something we've heard a lot about over the last kind of decade, this ability to rewire our brains. It's pretty amazing. Number 3, small, consistent actions. I am going to say this word, trump willpower. I mean, it's very timely and also very amusing. Small, consistent actions trump or beat willpower. Most people try to change habits by doing something huge. Have you done that? I definitely have. We go from doing absolutely nothing to oh my gosh, I'm hitting the gym twice a day for the next 7 days. And then, oh wow, I've injured my shoulder. I've burned out. I'm exhausted. I'm sick. We cut out sugar completely and we live on rabbit food. We have a complete total food overhaul. But, our diets resemble nothing like they did yesterday. And guess what happens? It's too much. It's overwhelming. It's unachievable. We don't like it. And by week 2, we're back to our old habits. So what's the secret? Start ridiculously small. Sounds insane, right? So James Clear wrote a book called Atomic Habits. You might have heard of it. I have signed up to James's newsletter because I find his dollops of wisdom that he sends out in his newsletter every week, these little bite-sized pieces, are really great for digesting and for redirecting and reconsidering habits. But this book is one that I talk a lot about in my 12-week program, because habits is a whole module in my program. It's so important. And James talks about habit stacking and micro habits. Basically the idea that the smallest changes done consistently make the biggest impact over time. So the idea with habit stacking is if we start with one small thing and that then becomes a habit, it leads us to, feeling like we have the ability to then introduce the next thing. We've had success with building that first habit into our lives. And we habit stack all this concept of micro habits, these tiny little behaviours that when they accumulate, they lead us to where we want to go. Think about brushing your teeth. We don't even think about it, right? It feels weird when you don't do it. In fact, if you go to bed without having brushed your teeth, how many of you, just before you drop off, remember and think about how fairy your mouth feels and up you get? Because it feels wrong to not take that action, to not do that habit. You don't need motivation for it because it's part of your routine. We just do it. And that's what we're going for with our health habits. All these other habits that, we desire to and we need to put in place to get the results that we want have the same impact as brushing your teeth twice a day. A lot of them take the same amount of time. Imagine what would happen if you stopped brushing your teeth? How long would it take for your teeth to be showing signs of you stopping that habit? Weeks? Months? Your health is the same. The absence of those habits that are going to get you to where you want to go are keeping you here. But this is also the great news. So instead of saying, I'm going to work out 5 times a week, start with, I'm going to put on my workout clothes and do 5 minutes of movement. And this is an approach I have with my clients all the time. You know, those that are not consistently exercising, I tell them to remove these big ideas that they've got to go and exercise for an hour, because that is the thing that is even stopping them getting started. When I don't feel like exercising, I put my workout clothes on and I say to myself, I'll just do 5 minutes. And guess what? Invariably, once you've done the 5 minutes, you keep going. But you also don't have to. You set yourself an intention of doing that 5 minutes. That's all you need to do. And if you're done, then you've started with that micro habit. You know, instead of saying I'm cutting out all sugar, start with saying I'm going to add protein to my breakfast so that I don't have a mid-morning crash. Small wins create momentum. And when you don't have that mid-morning crash because you added the protein in, it actually lifts you up enough to contemplate making changes to other areas. And this is very much my approach with all of my clients. We need to think of that goal as the long-term result of those daily habits. What habits do we need to put into our lives that will lead us there? Is it a walk around the block in the morning? Is it a glass of water before your coffee? Is it not looking at Instagram first thing? Have I hit some raw nerves there? Maybe you're thinking I need all of those. But they're all tiny habits. And if you start doing those and your brain feels that sense of achievement, you have that capacity to add in new ones. So the habit loops that are keeping you stuck. Now let's talk about why some habits seem impossible to break. And this comes down to something called the habit loop, which has 3 parts. It has a cue, it has routine, and it has reward. So the cue is the trigger. Could be stress, it could be boredom, it could be the time of day. The routine is the habit itself, grabbing a snack, skipping a workout, or scrolling instead of sleeping. And the reward is the payoff, a dopamine hit, comfort, distraction. So let's say every afternoon around 3 p.m, you hit a slump and crave sugar like lots of women do. That's the cue. Your routine is grabbing the chocolate bar, and the reward is a temporary energy boost. The problem is that sugar spike leads to a further crash and your metabolism stays stuck in a blood sugar roller coaster. To break the cycle, you have to change the routine, not rely on willpower when that craving comes. So maybe instead of chocolate, you have a high protein snack like nuts or a boiled egg. And instead of sitting, you take a quick 5-minute walk. The cue is still there, but you've now created a new, healthier habit loop. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I talk about both inside my program, but also generally. If I'm working with clients in any capacity, even if it's a nutrition client that turns up and needs help with a gut health issue, those habits are still things they've got to put into place to get their health in a different space. So how do we break old patterns and build new ones? All right, let's bring this puppy home with a simple strategy that you can start today. It's called the 2-minute rule. Any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do. If it takes longer, your brain resists. So instead of, I'm going to start meditating for 20 minutes a day, start with, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths before my coffee. Instead of, I'm cutting out processed food, start with, I'm adding 1 extra serve of veggies today. Your brain loves easy wins. You get a dopamine hit. And when you stack those wins, motivation stops being necessary because those habits start to take over. So I hope this conversation has helped. We obviously could talk a lot more about it, but I really want to just circle back. James Clear talks about this in the Atomic Habits. He talks about this concept of cue, routine, reward. So remember, cue is the trigger. Routine is the habit that you do to fix the trigger, and the payoff is usually that dopamine hit, a sense of comfort, a sense of reward. So start looking at the actions that you're taking, and can we replace them with a 2-minute habit? I want you to have a think right now as you're listening to this. What's one thing you could do in the next hour, today, sometime soon, a 2-minute habit that you could add into your day? Maybe it's a protein shake in the morning. If you know that you either skip breakfast or, your toast and jam or cereal, maybe you have a protein shake before you eat your regular breakfast. That takes less than 2 minutes. That's going to support changes to your metabolic health. Such an easy thing to do. Maybe it's a quick glass of water in the morning before you do anything. Have a think about it, and remember, taking action spurs on taking more action. So imperfect action trumps perfect action every time. And I would love to hear what action steps you decide to take. So remember, weight loss is not about willpower. It is about strategy. Build those habits that are going to serve you, and your body will respond. And until next time, keep showing up for yourself. Keep being fabulous.